Okay, back at it. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and we're going to complete this painting that we began this morning here. This painting by Edwin Holgate, Joan Green, visiting the artist in Morin Heights, circa 1938. We've already gotten pretty far on it. Let's just take a look at the painting thus far. There's where we're at right now. Let's do a quick side-by-side comparison so you can see. There's a few things that we're going to complete. We're going to potentially change the color of this with maybe a green glaze. We've got her hair to do, her clothing, a bit on her hands, and these leaves. Potentially we might do a little bit to the face. We could add a little bit more nuance. There's a pretty strong shadow here, and we could dive in a little bit more, but honestly, I'm pretty happy with the way it looks at this particular moment here. If you are watching the channel for the very first time, please hit like, hit subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. I'm not usually starting a stream at like 9:30 at night. I'm usually long done by now. So if you want to know when these kind of strange, unusual bonus episodes are happening, hit that notification bell so you know when that's happening. As well as I encourage you to join the Facebook group, to take a photograph of your artwork and join the Facebook group. And once a month I go through them and give some feedback. If you want to leave a donation, as little as someone left a 25-cent donation through PayPal just earlier today. So you can do that as well. If everyone... all of my 17+ thousand subscribers left a quarter, you know, every stream, boy, oh boy, life would change dramatically for me. Just a quarter, right? And then there's the super chat function. If you want to contact me through, to send an e-transfer, use the email address on my website, that's below, or contact me through the Facebook group, as many of you already do. Okay, so there'll be a time-stamped playlist. We are roughly at we're about to start background pass number 3 here. I used to have one that was a little bit bigger. Let me see. No? Okay, I don't have one of those. But that's where we're at. We're going to start background pass. Oh, here we are. Background pass number 3 is where we're at right now, is our next step. So maybe before I start that, I'm just going to put some color on my palette. And one of the things that I did just before I wrapped up, or as I was wrapping up after the camera went off, is I just scooped extra paint that I had into these jars. So I'm going to do that right now. Rather than squeezing paint out of the tubes, I'm just going to literally use some of the paint that I had used earlier. And while I do that, I'm just going to get all these little crumbs everywhere, which are the bane of any painter's existence, because these wind up in your paint. So it looks like some of this has dried out. There wasn't much in that jar. Let me see. That I'm going to have to actually use paint out of the tube. I'll just put that aside so I know to clean that. Now, especially with paint like this that I've used in, from an open, it's gone onto the palette and been scooped back off. you know, that sometimes there's other colors that somehow make their way into this paint. So, you know, especially as I'm scooping it back out, you know, I try to, you know, I'm just wiping it on my pant leg here, which is how my painting clothes get so dirty so quickly. But, yeah, it's sort of like a jump start. As I mentioned before, I kind of like it when my colors start to get a little bit messy. The palette, I mean, starts to kind of get, you know, full of stuff. That yellow smells a little bit rotten. It's, meaning it's partly dried and it's kind of going a little bit moldy. Which, you know, is, if we were eating this paint, paint that's a little bit wet or, you know, once it dries, I'm not too concerned with, you know, mold taking over the painting and ruining it. Acrylic paint is plastic, and I guess possibly, you know, somebody out there would know better than I do, but I've never heard of, you know, bacteria that is going to digest the plastic. Well, I mean, I think I've heard something about somebody trying to invent a bacteria that would digest plastic in the ocean or something like that. But needless to say, I'm not worried about 200 years from now some dormant bacteria in my cool yellow coming alive and leading to the end of the world. That's just, it could happen, I guess. That sounds like an interesting movie. Okay. So let's get the painting back up. So where should we start? I think, where did we left off? You know, I think I might go right into her hair, I think. Just because one of the things is that her face looks a little bit different than the original. Absolutely. But it possibly part of what's making me feel like the face is so different is the hair. And often we don't even really think of the hair as being part of the face, although it clearly is so much a part of our identity, right? Anyone who's had, you know, a bad haircut, or their, you know, the hair gel is starting to go on, or the frizz or whatever in the rain, everybody knows how they feel when their hair isn't quite right. So it's possible that part of the difference that I see in the face is, you know, there's, the eyes are slightly different. We talked about that last episode, but I want to get that hair a little bit closer, and then I think I might feel a little bit better about how this looks. So that hair that she's got here is kind of like a warm greenish brown. So let's take our warm yellow, take a little bit of warm red, and some warm blue. And let's mix that up. Now, if we use a different set of a ratio of paint, we would get a peachy brown. We could get a you know, brown that probably like this brown. But here, because I put so much more blue in there, and there was more yellow and less red, we've got this very greenish brown. And I think let's just zoom into both paintings here. Just get this out of the way. Oh, and look who's tuned in. There's Paula. Thanks, Michael. I just finished the sketching. I'll follow and catch up. Pascaline says, phew, 5:37 a.m. here in the UK. Woke up, and yeah, it's back on. And Nikki says, hey, guys, good evening from here. It's 11:40 p.m. here in Is that Nashville? Nashville, Tennessee? Okay. I mean, you can also see just that extra little bit of black that I put on her lips. I mean, it's a tiny little amount of paint, but it does make it look like her mouth is just barely open, like she's just about to say something. Right? I think that's fascinating that little tiny bit changes maybe the entire way somebody would read that painting. And I understand for some people that's super frustrating. Personally, I think that's really interesting. And yes, it might change the whole story that somebody might have when they look at the painting, and you might get all frustrated. I just think it's like Bob Ross talks about, like the happy accident, right? It's just an opportunity to see something differently. Okay, so let's just take a look at this green that I've got on here. And that is definitely what we would call the local color. We see that right there. I'm going to put this mostly everywhere here. Let's see, too. I kind of had to go a little bit further out here because there was a weird little stray hair thing that I needed to deal with. And maybe I'm just going to take my finger. You could do this with a rag. I'm just going to remove a little bit of that paint. Like maybe I will, where's a little rag? Because I want that color, but I don't want it to completely obliterate everything that was there. Okay. That's a good little start. Let's mix our black now. So we're going to take our cool blue, our stinky rotten cool yellow. Woo! Warm red. Let's mix that all up together. Okay. And let's just bring this over to this side, to our green paint. I was gonna blow dry it, and then I was, you know what? Let's just paint wet into wet here. The worst. I don't. My water. Okay, one second. I just gotta get my water. Nikki says, in my opinion, it's like she's frowning, thinking about something. Interesting. Yeah, maybe a little bit less. Yeah, it's almost like maybe I the other thing too, that it looks like her jaw has dropped down a little bit. That's just probably as I was painting it. So it does look like her mouth is not just the little space opening, but that her jaw has also kind of moved a little bit further down. I don't know. I just think that kind of thing is super weird, neat. Okay, so let's take... I'm going to take this paint that was on my brush here. Gonna wipe that off, put that in my water. Let's get some of this black into that green. Okay. Not quite dark enough. Just adding more of that black. Sometimes I might leave little bits of brown kind of coming through there. Should I have done that extra? Yeah, okay. I added that little extra blob there. Okay, and then I'm just going to take some black on its own. Okay, just wipe a little bit of that paint off. I'm going to take a tiny bit of white and add it to this green. If that's a little bit too much, I can just take, well, you know, I might have to wait for that to dry. So on camera, that does look much brighter, but you know what? I think that's okay. I mean, one of the things that I've done here is there's a lot of light, and it really illuminates things, including all of the imperfections in the art. Usually, you know, when I get these upstairs into my living room, they get much, much darker. So what appears pretty, like, bright and obvious later on appears much more subtle. But let's just move on from that hair, because it's still wet, and when it's wet it can look a little bit shiny, and that can make it look brighter or darker just as the way the light's hitting it. So there's no point in fussing on it until we see what it will actually ultimately look like. Pascaline says, it's like in a Hercule Poirot story. They all meet up to work out who did it. So she's the detective here. Interesting. Okay. Let's do the... What do I want to do now? I think I'm going to do the leaves on the far left. I think that would also be satisfying to kind of get this tackled. All right. And you'll recall that when to get this painting done, I painted all of the background and then put these leaves on top. And I used a little bit of white mixed in with a little bit of green, just to block out the dark colors underneath. So let's mix the color that we want to put here. We're going to put a warm blue. So let's take some warm yellow and some warm blue, and I always start with a little bit because blue is so dominant, right? That we don't want to just mix them all together, make a giant batch of green here and realize we've gone too far. So we've got kind of a lighter version. Let's make a medium version and then a darker version. So I'm inclined to start a little bit lighter. And just paint all of these leaves a little bit lighter. And then to darken everything down as need be. can also see like the opposition between the cooler brown or cooler greens in the background and the warmer green that I'm painting with now, that we deliberately used to get to create that sense of depth in this painting. Now again, this is the quick and dirty way of painting leaves and things. If I wanted to spend all night long here, I would do these all individually. In fact, I might just let that dry for a few moments. That already makes me feel a lot better. Like if I just zoom back out. Obviously, it's not anywhere near done, but it was kind of a little bit of a, whoa, what's going on there kind of thing. So while that's drying, let's work on her shirt here. We haven't tackled that yet. So maybe before I do that, let's go to... Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to go and work on her shirt and her pants, hands, maybe even the couch, and then the last thing we'll do is those leaves there, because I feel like I'm pretty well set up for that. Okay, so when it comes to her jacket, let's zoom in. We already began by applying this warm yellow onto the surface. Or sorry, warm red, blah, blah. So, and those lines are all there. So what I'll do is I'm just going to take my warm red. You can see there's actually some color already in there. I kind of don't mind that. And in fact, I'm just going to take that dirty color that was in here. I'm going to add maybe just a little bit of warm blue. And that gives a bit of a purple quality. If it gets too purple, let's say I just accidentally, whoa, okay, now we've got a little bit of a purpley thing. What I would just do to cancel that is just add a little bit of warm yellow. And that's just going to go take it from a purple back into a brown, which is what would happen with red or yellow or orange if we darken it, right? It's going to go kind of brownish. So that's pretty good. So we can do this instead of going instead of the black, just as a bit of a more nuanced color in the shadow. So actually, let's go to a different brush here. I just wipe off that excess paint. And then we'll clean that brush. You know what? I think I'm going to have to make it darker just so I can cover up some of these lines. So I am going to take some of this black. That's a much more severe line. If just to kind of soften some of these edges, I could kind of just smooth that out. But you know, I think I'm just going to keep it like these big shapes for right now. So if I just do this like a dry brush, I can just kind of very lightly, I mean, it's almost like I sometimes do this with a glaze later on. It's definitely more severe than the original, and it's probably not showing up on camera very well. But worst comes to worst, if I go too dark with this, I can paint just red over top of it, and it'll just sort of, it won't, you know, take it all away, but it'll just sort of, you know, get rid of the intensity of that black. So I typically don't go this black this quickly. I usually would kind of build up to this. But I kind of like how this looks. Sometimes it's fun to do things exactly the opposite of the way that you normally do them. And this I'll get very similar results too. I'm not even worried about it not working. I think we'll be happy with the results when we're done here. It's about just being flexible, right? To allow the painting to tell you what it needs and listening to it. So I'm just going and getting some of the darkest little areas. So just going back over some areas and making them darker and darker and darker. Okay, I'm just going to take my warm red again and just go into the darker color a little bit so that I can just kind of go around and even into the shadows a little bit. And that this will lighten some of the shadows and darken some of the areas that are a little bit lighter. Because it's a little bit of a mid-value here, so just can get a little bit more subtlety. So I can already see a few places where I actually want to darken even further with that black again. So it's always sort of a little bit of a give and go. Sometimes as you're painting, you realize, oh, this needs to be darker. These buttons, for instance, in some places need to be darker. So now I am taking a bit more black and going back in. To those places that really need just that extra little punch. Yeah, I've definitely gone more severe than I ever normally do, but I don't mind it, so I'm just going to keep on going with it. It's definitely a bit of a departure from the original. Okay. Let's, I'm going to go the other way here. I'm just going to get a little bit of this black off my brush. Let's take our red. I'm going to use just a tiny bit of white. I don't want to put too much white in there because the white will cause it to lose some intensity. So I'm actually also just going to put a tiny bit of yellow in there. Give it a little bit of a peachy quality in the highlight. I guess I should probably have done that so I didn't get gray on there. You know what? I'm going to remix that. I don't like that it's a little bit gray. So let's take that again. Let's take our warm red. Take a bit of warm yellow. A little bit of white. Right now, I'm just kind of covering up the red that was there before, just to give it a little bit more intensity. That's the baby camera. That's our daughter turning over in bed there. Now I can just kind of go a little bit back into the shadow, put a bit more red back in here. If I feel like, it's just too black. Maybe just a bit too intense. Now I'd be very careful about doing this if I had a lot of white in there. Then this means again, there is 10 grains of white in here, not much at all. So it's barely impacting. It's just adding a little bit of coverage, just kind of diluting some of the shadows in certain places. I'm kind of almost dry brushing it in. So maybe I made a misnomer. It's not really adding highlights here. It's more just maybe adding a little bit of nuance, a little bit more vibrancy into those shadows. Okay, and if I look at the left side of her shirt, we're going to add a lot more yellow to this color, make it slightly orangey. And again, just a little bit of white. That's still actually very subtle. So often we're going to find this right next to some of the darkest parts. Okay, let's do that again. Let's take more white this time and more yellow. And just amp it up in just a few places. Just taking a little dry brush to blend that in. This is really effective at just giving that light that's coming in from outside that really makes it look like it's hitting and glowing on her clothing. Lots of sirens going on outside there. Hope everyone's okay. So sometimes after that dries, I just go back and add a little bit more. That's something, probably the main thing that that I learned from Thomas Kincaid, of all people. I know he might be a divisive figure for some artists who are not a big fan of his. We did an episode on Thomas Kincaid a couple Christmases ago, and just spending all that time thinking about his work and looking at Thomas Kincaid's work, I thought was really beneficial for me personally. I think I think you can learn from every artist. Every artist has got something to show you. Even if at the, if you want to think of it as what not to do, sometimes learning what not to do just by seeing somebody who does it is just as helpful as learning what to do. That's why I always tell my students, like I say to them, you're going to be, in the next 4 years of art school, you're going to see a lot of lectures, and some of them are going to be amazing and they're going to change your life, and there's going to be some that are just going to be brutal, the worst, experiences of your life. And there's two ways you can look at it. One is you're just wasting your time sitting in a lecture hall listening to some idiot talk, or banking that information for the future and being like, okay, when one day I'm invited to go to a university to talk about my artwork, I'm going to remember this moment, and I'm going to try to present my work in a way that is much more engaging than this person did. And in that respect, that moment where you're sitting in the class just tearing your hair out as how bad this was can be really, really helpful. And it can also help you stay awake if you have to. If you kind of sit up and just be like, okay, how can I learn from this? Is there something I can learn? What is the lesson here? Oops, of course that's not on camera as I'm sitting here painting away. That's one thing, kind of a little philosophy I try to think is like, what is the lesson? What am I supposed to be learning from this experience in life? And the more that I frame things like that, the less kind of personal things become. And the more of a kind of a challenge it presents to my brain. And I obviously I like a little challenge, which is why I've been doing this for a few years. Okay. So I just painted kind of little strings that are going around those buttons on her shirt. Pascaline says, I love her top. It is a fun top. It's true. And then I'm just going to take maybe a little bit of my black and red. Just painting kind of underneath those strings. So down here. Let's do her pant leg. Let's take some of this blue, black. So I'm kind of lightening this up. It was a little bit too black before. I'm gonna put some black back in here, but I think I just want something not quite as... I think that black also was leaping forward a little bit too much. So putting a little bit of blue back in here. Just gonna lighten that whole area up. Oh, of course it's not on camera. Blah. I think that's pretty hard to see how what that looks like, but okay. That's much better. I like that on there. I'm just going to take my red. I'm going to go back over a few places with just pure red. This might be too much on my brush at the moment. Yeah, that's better. So especially now that I put that blue down here, this made me feel like, wow, this black on her outfit is so black. I need to have more color in here. So it's still really dark. It's just got a little bit more vibrancy back. That's much better. I don't think that's really coming across on camera, but so I'm just kind of just lightly painting over top of the darker areas. The lighter areas are pretty good. I can do a little bit of this over the lighter areas just to, but you want to be careful because it's going to actually make it stand out a lot when it goes over top of any white. So again, that's an example right here. This here is an example of when you think you're done with an area and then you paint something else not connected to it at all. I mean, none of this is actually touching her shirt except right there. And yet, once I paint that area down below, it kind of threw off the area above. And I can see how that could be frustrating for people. But just remember that it's not a reflection on you as an artist, and doesn't mean that you made a mistake or anything. It's just, I think of paintings as kind of alive, right? And they got personalities, and just like, you know, I was just putting our daughter to bed moments ago, and you know, we had a great day, super happy, and then all of a sudden, just switches from just giggling and laughing to crying. And it's like, okay, you're tired, let's go to bed. Right? And so you just have to be sensitive to those moments where, okay, I think we just need to change it up a little bit. We've reached the limit. Okay. That's good. I'm going to put a little highlights on her legs. I think her face is fine. Like, maybe, you know, I don't know. I think that's good. Nikki says, I gotta go. See you guys later. Art hugs for y'all. Bye-bye. Well, I hope so. My goodness. What time is it there in Nashville? It's like 1 in the morning or something, right? Oh, my goodness. 12:30 or so. Let's just back that out so you can see where we're at. So interestingly enough, this blue, this is one of the reasons why I love painting, is that this area here is simultaneously darker and yet more vibrant than it was before. Remember, we had that aubergine color, a little slightly purple color down here. I painted over it with a black that I mixed with warm blue, and I don't know, it's probably not coming up on camera so much, but now it's like a really deep ocean blue, like, you know, you're at the bottom of the ocean, and that's what that looks like. So it's behaving totally different than a black would. Like, this area would just be flat, boring, uninteresting black. And here it's got all of this life and energy in it. It's especially compared to that red. They're really vibrating. I am tempted to trim this down here. We'll see. Let me think about that. There's something weird. Like, so the original painting kind of crops off right down there. The original painting ends like right there, I think. So we don't really know how this is supposed to look. That is kind of unusual for the chair arm to kind of go out like that. But, you know, it might be one of those things I might not even think about or notice later, so I'll just leave it for now. Now the chair. You know, when I look at the chair side by side to the original, I'm immediately struck by how different that color is. That we've got, you know, in hers, much more of a greenish quality, whereas mine has much more of a, it's just more tan colored. It doesn't have that same green. So the thing that I kind of ask myself is, do I want to do I want to alter it? And it wouldn't be hard at all. I could just basically what I just did here, but do that over top of this. I gotta say that when I look at them separately, it's not such an issue for me. I don't really mind it on mine. So I think I'll just for now gonna keep it like that. I do want to take, now I'm just noticing, I want to put a little bit of a line around her left shoulder here. So that's very subtle. His is actually much wider and more visible than mine. So there's something happening here that is odd. I'm going to take some of my red paint. Just need to soften that hard corner that had been formed there. Okay. So let's take some blue, a little bit of white, and just mix a bit of this into my darker color here. Get a slightly grayish quality. Okay, just take my darker color again. And this is just actually some pure blue right out of the tube. Okay. And there's Lolly. Probably just waking up, or what time is it there, Lolly? Two classes in one day. So there's I could do more with that hand for sure. I'm kind of inclined. There's something about the roughness of that I kind of like at this stage. So I'm gonna blow dry all of this. So because I want to paint these leaves now, and my sleeve and everything's gonna be dragging over top, so I'm just gonna mute that. So let's do these leaves. So I'm just trying to think, should I do the darker ones or the lighter ones first? I don't think it's the same sort of thing either way. Let's do the darker ones first. Let's take our black. Let's just mix this green again. Might not appear it, but this is dramatically darker than what I already have there. So I'm not going to go to my darkest dark immediately. I just want to kind of go dark, but not all the way. Let's start up near the top. I don't really have a strategy for what I'm doing right here. I'm just sort of kind of glancing at the original. Trying to think of these, just creating shapes here. Okay, so you just blocked in some very rough shapes. Okay, so I'm now going to take my black and mix this into the green. And just kind of continue with this. Just kind of selectively darkening some of the darker areas. Let's go the opposite direction. I'm going to take some blue, warm blue, and use primarily warm yellow. This is the kind of thing I'm sure a teacher back in college would have said was very lazy. Just not really looking at the original, just putting brush strokes down, making it kind of look right. But, you know, it's late, and sometimes we get a little bit lazy towards the end of a painting. Start thinking about what we're going to do after. I don't mind. I don't mind this looking like that. Yeah, I think that's okay. Now, he's used actually some cooler greens here, and I've certainly used some. There's some little bit of cooler. Well, actually, no, there isn't. I don't think there's ever been any cool greens in here. I could do that, but part of what I want to do is just emphasize the warm and cool color relationships in paintings and in these classes. So I'm going to kind of keep it a little bit more to the hue to the rule, which of course is made to be broken, but so I might just leave those leaves. Actually, let's get, I see he's got a little stem. Okay, I do wondered if I want to just chop that leg of the chair off. I think I'll leave it. I think the last thing that I might want to do is just a quick darker glaze on a few things. Oh, and right there. Yeah, so we'll get a black glaze going on here. So I'm going to use my glazing fluid, my satin glazing fluid, which is just another word for not shiny. I put a little bit of it there on my palette. Let's see, that brush is actually dirty. I'm going to get this glazing fluid on my brush. And then I'm going to take a little bit of black. Not much. The more I put on there, the more bold this brush stroke will be. And there's something kind of nice about this, doing this kind of more subtly and building up. So actually, let's just... Okay. Let's blow dry all of this. Just kind of keep on darkening a few things. This bottom right corner should be dark. Add a little bit more glazing fluid. I love glazing and just slowly darkening things at my own pace, and I can just get darker and darker and darker very slowly. That's blow dry. Okay, just gonna darken that area down here. I can also go over some of these leaves and just give an extra little bit of nuance so that we don't have more variety of bright and darkness of value. One thing, it's interesting how definitely just looks different on camera. This area kind of irks me a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of red and a little bit of my glazing fluid and bring this in here. Just so that I'm not painting with pure black. Okay, I think that's everything I want to do. So let's, okay. So we're going to wrap up here in just a couple of seconds. If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Take a photograph of the painting you made, whether it's today's painting or something else. You're just listening to me as I paint and you're doing something else completely. Share it with the groups and get some feedback so you can get to become a better artist. I think that's what we all want, is to be improving as we go forward. If you want to support the channel with a small donation, please consider leaving a small donation. Somebody left 25-cent donation through PayPal earlier today, so you can too. You can use the super chat function or do an e-transfer using my email, which is on my website, or contact me through the Facebook group for that. Okay, so with our side-by-side comparison, let's take a look at these two paintings side by side and do a little evaluation. Obviously, they're a little bit different. I did resist the urge to do a bit of a more greenish glaze over here. I could have literally just taken my warm yellow. I think it's a little bit of a combination of warm yellow and cool blue, actually, is what I would have done. But, you know, if I'm not looking at the original, I'm quite happy with the way this looks on its own. So I don't think mine needs it, but you could do that if you wanted to get a little closer accuracy to the original. So how about let's zoom in and just kind of take a look at a few different things in detail here. Okay, so just start. This is where we began the painting, in this little area in the background. I'm happy with that. You know, if I go down a little bit, you can see there's a little bit of that yellow showing through. That doesn't bother me at all. I think that's fine. You know, I used a little bit of tape to get straighter lines, and so we get this really nice straight line here. And then because I didn't use any matte medium or anything, some of that paint snuck in underneath the tape. It's not a big deal, but it is a little disappointing, obviously. The leaves here, again, are a little bit different color. In fact, let's just, while we're right here, just scroll down and look at that side by side. I've made a choice to just make that a little bit warmer, with warmer yellow. I think he probably had a cobalt, so it's just a little bit more muted. I just really want to emphasize the warmer colors in the foreground and cool colors in the background, so you can kind of see that happening a little bit more here. And obviously there's also a little bit of white and gray there. Let's just go back up to the curtain here, where I did spend a little bit of time on that area. I do have some of those colors, that kind of bright lime green in there. I just made a choice, though, to go a little bit more on the teal side of things. So I've got a little bit more of that teal blue kind of coming through. So let's look at the area in behind her head on the wall. So I think I've got the color pretty close. It's just a really dark, cool green, and just lightened it up a little bit. Now, he did a little bit of painting in there. You can see he probably even used that to clean up the area around her head, but I'm happy with the way that turned out. It's a little more subtle, a little less painterly, as they might say, than the original, but I'm going to just go with that. Let's look at the bottom right-hand corner here. I think that it might be his signature there, perhaps. I'm not sure what that is. You know, the way that I did paint this shirt, I think I did go a little bit dark, a little darker than maybe I needed to or should have. I could have just done that with much more subtle glazing and building it up, just like I did down here on the armrest. But, you know, it's okay. I think the way that I did the buttons might be a little bit clumsy. Let's look at her arm here. Now, one thing I noticed is he painted this hand and arm in a very grayish, very, you know, like purples and greens, and it's almost like macabre pale, like, so he's obviously observing the light quite carefully. He's painting this person from life, and that's what he saw. Personally, just as I'm making my own painting, which has to live on its own, I just felt that I wanted to kind of add a little bit more light on there. I didn't want it to go quite as dark. Like you could just see some of these dark purples and greens, which are lovely, but I just think it's a little too much for, you know, just as my own painting developed. It just felt like it would be too contrasting to the face. Let's look over here at the chair. I think if I was to do this again, I would have that armrest kind of just go maybe even straight down instead of paralleling her knee, because that's something that I just added in Photoshop, maybe accidentally. Now that I see the full painting, it feels a little bit strange. So I was kind of darkening that down to de-emphasize it. If I had more of my background color, which is not too hard to mix, I would have probably just painted that out, but it's okay. The hands were pretty tricky. You can see that he's left them very loose and undefined. So in my drawing, I had spent some time, you know, drawing fingernails and things on there. But I've just here also just made them pretty muted. I mean, that is a challenging viewpoint to have fingers coming towards the viewer, right? So that's a pretty tricky thing to work on. Let's just look at the jacket in this area. Again, maybe just a little bit too bold, too quick to go dark in those places, but I don't know. I don't mind it. And then maybe let's look at the couch cushion, the chair. I like how mine turned out. Again, it's not the quote-unquote right color, but I like this kind of tan color. I think it works well in this particular scene. Yeah, so I'm going to keep it like that. Let's just look at the shadow behind her head. Mine is a little, as I look at it now, it's a little bit more defined, almost like a cartoonish kind of ghostly like apparition behind her, whereas he's done quite a nice job of just making that a little bit more subtle, and less like a head and, you know, cartoonish kind of thing going on back there. In terms of the face, let's just... again, I made a decision not to darken the outer edge of around that face, just because I felt like I did an okay job as it was, and I just was like, yeah, I'm gonna leave it like that. Again, the look, her expression is a little bit different than the original. And if I was, you know, and some of the colors aren't totally accurate either, because I was planning on spending more time on the face, but it's one of those things where sometimes you do it and then you're just like, yeah, actually, I think that's good enough for me. That line on the left side of the nose could have been omitted. You could see that he's just done a very subtle job of that, and it is really beautiful. His version, I mean, obviously I love this painting. I think, as I said, I think this painting is basically the Canadian Mona Lisa, and it's bizarre to me that this painting is not, you know, very famous, and that it sold for only $15,000 4 or 5 years ago, when I think it maybe could sell for $20 million in 5 or 6 years. But so I mean, I obviously love this painting. I guess I just mean that as I painted it, I was just kind of happy with the way it was turning out, and I just didn't want to do more to it. I felt like doing more wasn't necessarily going to improve the painting that much. Her hair, you know, I made a decision to allow a little bit of that brown to come through, which I like. It's definitely a little bit different than his. He's actually darkened it. I could have actually, when I was glazing, add a little bit of that black glaze into that area, but which would make sense. But, you know, I think it's fine. So, I think that is good enough for today. That's, I don't know, a long session over several, two longer sessions. So next week, I can't remember who the next one up is. Is it maybe Franz Johnston or Frank Johnston? Perhaps. Anyway, you'll know if you like this episode. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. You will know, and of course, obviously, if you join the Facebook group, you will be the first to know. Lolly says, you nailed it, Michael. Worth the extra time you put in. Thank you so much, Lolly. I appreciate it. Now get to bed. Okay, everybody, have yourselves a wonderful evening or morning in the case of Lolly, and those of you on the opposite side of the world, good morning. We will see you guys on our next episode. I'm probably going to do one this weekend too, so stick around for that. Okay, everybody, we'll see you soon. Good night.